Welcome to Life in Sirens, Behind and on the Scene, a podcast by first responders. We're your hosts, Sophie,
Jamie,
and Aubrey.
The content provided in this podcast is for informational and educational purposes only and should not be considered medical advice. The views and opinions expressed by the hosts and guests are their own and do not necessarily reflect the official policies or positions of any medical institutions, emergency medical services, or healthcare organizations. Patient privacy is a top priority, and all discussions involving real-world emergency situations are de-identified and altered to ensure confidentiality. Always consult with a qualified healthcare professional or your local EMS protocols before making any decisions regarding patient care or medical practices. Listener discretion is advised, as some topics may include discussions of real-world emergency situations. Welcome to another episode of...
I was just trying to get settled.
All right, well, it took you a long time.
Okay.
Anyway, welcome to another episode of Life in Sirens. Me and Aubrey are back for this week. Swear we're not dead. We didn't quit. We just I'm trying to move into a house, and it's been busy. But today we have a special guest for you. We have Austin, who is our captain. He has been my partner. He has been Soph's partner. And he basically raised us in the EMS world. He's been in EMS for going on 15 years. Yeah. Is that right? He's a critical care paramedic, and really just where we get all our knowledge. So welcome, Austin.
Thank you. Super happy to be here. And I do have to say, because I've been waiting for this moment. Obviously, you guys know how much I love you, but I want the world to know. Like, these girls do special things, and I can't express how proud I am of all three of them. It's pretty cool. Pretty cool sitting here after they've done their thing and watching them be successful in work and life, and then in this whole podcast realm. It's pretty cool.
Don't make me cry.
I know.
I will say, too, like, you know, when they were asking us, they were interviewing us for Fast 25, they were like, who is your person? Like, and actually, they asked me this for Fast Canada, too. I was like, Austin Meador.
Mm-hmm.
AUSTINMEADOR. And it's pretty cool that we just all somehow ended up together. So
you were talking earlier about how somebody was kind of asking the dynamics of our workplace and this podcast. Burton Street. And you were kind of explaining it to them, and they were like, how did that happen? And like, I ask myself that all the time. Like, how did this happen? I have no idea. Sheer luck, divine intervention, whatever you want to call it, but it is irreplaceable and amazing to be a part of.
It's the coolest thing.
It really is. I swear it was just chance. Like, Austin and I ended up partners by chance. Like, we didn't really know each other.
Yeah.
And then same thing with you and Soph.
Right.
You FTO'd Soph, and then I got my medic, so we couldn't rebid.
Right.
And then you and Soph bid together. And then I slept through a whole bid, and Wendy, our commander, put Aubrey and I together because she was at the very bottom. She just called Aubrey and was like, yo, you're partners with Jamie now.
I did run in there and said, Aubrey's with Jamie.
I know. I never even got called during that bid. Soph called me after the bid, and I was like, what happened? She was like, oh, you're with Jamie. I was like, okay.
So I haven't slept through a bid in a long time. I'm sober now.
Yeah, you're not making that mistake again. Look what you ended up with.
I know. Look how I got here.
It changed your life forever.
But yeah, it was all really just chance that we all ended up in the same space. And then when Austin got promoted, we got to keep him.
Yeah.
I know.
Well, that was the biggest thing is, you know, when those talks were going on, is it was like such a bittersweet
my gosh.
moment. But yeah, that was when, you know, nobody knew where the new captain position was going to be.
Well, when you first got it, or I don't know if you were like officially in it yet, but you were supervising a lot when I first got my medic.
Yeah.
And I would just be like, where is Austin? I need a supervisor. Send medic 23.
Yep. You'd be like,
I know how to get him.
Just send him. I
know how to get him to my scene.
I got your number.
And then now, years later, you've landed with Ash, and
she's such a sweet baby angel.
She's the sweetest.
Mm-hmm.
Well, and that was another thing about, you know, chance. You know, chance encounters are cool, but for it to happen this many times and be so
and she wasn't supposed to be my partner either.
Well, and that's the thing, you know, she was briefly, and then, you know, you had somebody else for a whole year, which, you know, that was fine, but then, you know, it came back around where Ashley got to be with us permanently, and that just It was really, and I tell her all the time, like, we make up the Sunday, but Ashley is the cherry on
She is the
top.
magic.
She
That's what I
really
tell her
is.
all the time. I'm like, she's like, I'm just like, we had that call, which this is also another cool thing about all of us being in the same station together, is recently we had a pretty insane trauma where we had to RSI the patient, and all of us got to be on this call because we are out of the same station, including Austin. His supervisor vehicle is out of our station as well. So we all showed up to this call, and it was badass, if I do say so myself. It went amazing. Everything that could have gone right did. And Ashley, she was like, I'm just an EMT. There were so many medics on the truck. I was like, no, we need you. I promise.
Absolutely.
Like, you remind us that there's BLS things to do, okay?
Absolutely.
I mean, it actually went perfect on that call because before anybody even really said anything, she was already getting IO on this guy. You know what I mean? So it was like,
for sure,
nothing had to be said.
I know. I didn't even ask her to do that. Nothing.
No. And she's smooth.
Yeah.
Like, she's super smooth. She fits in exactly where she sees need.
And
she
she's
doesn't
small,
miss.
so she really fits in.
She really fits in.
She does. She's teensy tiny. And she doesn't miss.
Yeah.
I've never seen that girl miss.
Oh, no. Mm-mm.
Yeah.
She can get an IV on me.
Which is impressive.
Pretty impressive.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, she is our magic.
I like
I
that.
know. We were talking about that on the podcast we recorded, too. She was like, I'm not a medic yet. And then I was like, well, you're kind of the best AMT ever. And
Right.
I think she knows a little bit. She's got to.
She
She's good at her
does.
job.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
She knows plenty.
She is a very humble person, but
Yeah.
there's plenty in that little brain of hers.
Oh,
I
yeah.
love being with an AEMT, too, honestly. It's a lot of fun.
I know. I was so mad at Aubrey when she went and got her medic.
Yeah, how dare you?
Yeah, you jerk.
I wish you all could have seen Aubrey's face.
I think it translated well.
I was proud but mad at you.
Yeah,
I
I
was
know.
like, this is my favorite dynamic. And then you were like, I'm smart.
It's funny how that comes back around because that was exactly how I felt.
And you had to
Right?
do it multiple times
Yeah.
in a
It's like,
row.
oh, it's time.
Yeah.
Oh,
Honestly, guys, just one more thing before we move on. We were all on shift, I guess. I know Jamie was on shift and I was on shift when I found out I was going to be partners with Austin. And at the hospital, we were bringing a patient in. I don't remember who I was with. I was walking in the hospital, like, pushing the stretcher. And Jamie was, like, put the stretcher to the side and was going into the EMS room. And she was like, congrats on being partners with Austin. And I was like, fuck. She hates me.
And I meant it. I was like, congratulations. Like,
She was being so genuine, and Soph
Yeah.
was like, she hates me.
because
literally
Soph was
did.
like, oh, this girl hates me. I stole her partner. Soph stole nothing. Like, Austin and I couldn't be partners. We couldn't be double medic. Like, it was
No,
not
but,
happening.
like,
so
emotionally.
him getting a good partner was like the only option. And so I genuinely was happy. But Soph was like, this.
So today we're going to talk about something that I think is not super talked about in EMS, but is also very prevalent in EMS, and has a lot to do with your mental health. I think working where you live, I think, takes a whole new aspect into the calls that you run, right? Because you don't get to run these calls and then leave and go back to your town and never have to look at these places again, right? Anytime you're out running errands, getting groceries, whatever it is, you're constantly reminded of, some of the crazy things that we see every day. And that's why we brought Austin on the show today, because this man, let me tell you, he's kind of a EMS legend in our area. So he has
Legacy.
Oh yeah.
Oh, you're our legacy.
Legacy. He has worked at the service for going on 15 years now.
Which is wild. Sorry.
Is wild.
That hurts.
Yeah.
He was literally born and raised in an EMS station. Both of his parents have worked for how long at this service?
I think Mama's at 43 in April, and Daddy will be 40 in August, I believe.
Isn't that
Something,
is crazy.
something like that.
And
Don't quote me on
both
the dates,
of these humans are still on trucks.
Yes.
Yeah.
Like, they're still working a truck.
Yeah.
At the same station, might I add you.
Yeah.
Different shifts, same station.
Yeah.
And Austin's little brother
I was just about to say that.
started at the county this year.
Yeah. That freaks me out so much. And you know what? I was just watching him one shift, and you are both your father, because he took his sunglasses off and he pulled his phone out of his pocket and he looked at it and then he picked it up and then it just looked like you, and it really freaked me out.
Yeah. The
Our-
mannerisms are strong.
Yes,
They're very strong.
the mannerisms are strong, and it's wild because my middle brother, who has no affiliation with EMS, is actually the exact same, but with my mother. He has my mother's mannerisms.
Man,
So,
the mannerisms are strong.
They are
it's
strong.
wild.
I know when I
It's
first
wild.
became partners with Austin, like the mannerisms were like already a thing, and everyone was like, "Be careful, you're gonna start looking and acting like them." And I was like, "What?" And then years later, I do all the things Austin does. It is such a strong trait.
I was gonna ask you, or I was gonna say also, because Austin has grown up and been raised by EMS and then worked here and everything, there was not a single place that we could go ever at any time for any reason, whether it was a call or just going to the gas station or go to the grocery store. Someone would be like, "Are you David Medder's son?"
Yep. And they'd be like, "I used to work with your daddy back in the 1983."
What really threw me off when people would be like, "Are you Big Daddy's son?" I'm like, "Who the frick is that?"
Oh yeah, everybody calls Austin's dad Big Daddy.
It freaks me
Well,
out.
let's put context to this, though. So before my dad got in EMS, he was the fire chief for the same county, and he used to be a really big guy. Like, I mean, he had a beer belly on him, but he was also very muscular. He was probably roughly 300 pounds. Like, he was a
Get it, David?
big
Dang.
boy, which all of us are. But he was a big boy. But he was stout. He was built like an ox, and so.
He looked so cool.
I can't remember. He told me one time who it was that actually gave him that name, and it just stuck.
It just stuck.
And so now it's not as prevalent, but man, when I was growing up,
Big
I
Daddy.
don't know that David was his name. Like,
Yeah.
It was
I
just
wasn't.
Big Daddy.
Yeah, I wasn't sure
And
what his
that
first name was.
is absolutely on first responder nicknames. Like,
Oh, yeah.
I went to medic school with a guy. I don't know his name. His name is Pickle.
Yeah, I remember Pickle.
Yeah. And you say, "Your name's just Pickle now."
Well,
Mm-mm. Austin, grew up in the county you work in.
Yep.
Which explains why I've never seen you use a GPS.
yeah, he drove everywhere. It was great. I was
Everywhere.
a passenger princess EMT.
Right. He'd be like, "Hey, James, is that the 300 or 400 block?" And I'd be like, "It's 300." And he'd be like, "All right, that's on the left." I'm like, "Okay.
"You just
what-
get us there."
Yeah, go south. What? I don't know. But do you have, like, because you've been living here and running calls here for so long, do you have streets that remind you of calls, or is it all just home? Like, what do you see when you drive around the city?
A little bit of both. Obviously, the big calls still stand out, but you know the ones that also stand out, not just the big traumatic calls and things like that. Typically, and I've heard Soph talk about this before, is the funny calls. You know, and the 3 or 4 of us all together have had funny calls, and so we legitimately remember when and where those took place, and so those are my favorite.
Okay, tell us about how it was growing up in EMS. Like, we've heard the stories of you, like, literally getting dropped off at the station and, like, babysat when you were a kid. And I know you've also said that, like, growing up, you had no intention of going into EMS because it wasn't, like, cool to you.
Right.
It was just like, oh yeah, that's what my parents do.
Yeah.
Which is crazy. But
Yep.
tell us a little bit about that.
So, yeah, I mean, you got to think this is the 90s, you know, for context. So, it was nothing for me to, you know, go into work with mom or daddy, and they'll be like, "I'm going on a call. I'll be back in a couple hours." You know, like, it was just, that's
so crazy.
commonplace. But, you know, typically, back then, some of the stations, much like ours now, have 2 trucks and possibly a supervisor or something like that. So there's usually somebody who's running around there. During the day, you know, the maintenance guy would be there, or, you know, something like that. So it wasn't anything sketchy or anything like that, but I think that played a part in my initial disinterest in this field. You know,
Oh, for sure.
You become so accustomed to it, it's not interesting anymore.
Yeah.
I remember being young, you know, mom and daddy would bring the ambulance to school and stuff like that on career day and, like, field day and blah, blah, blah. Like, that was cool when I was young. But I remember being in, like, 6th grade. I was like, "Oh, my God,
Get out
can
of
y'all
here."
please leave?" Yeah.
Yeah,
You know?
like, this is so
Yeah.
embarrassing.
And so as you get older, you know, you kind of transition into those kind of feelings. And I think that was same thing with career choice. You know, I just wasn't interested. Wasn't anything bad, just was not interested. And then through a hectic chain reaction,
Yeah.
here I am.
He
He
did
said-
try.
he said, "I
tried to
need-"
do something else.
Yeah, Austin's a
did.
diesel mechanic. If anybody needs anything fixed.
Yeah, I after high school, I went to Nashville Auto Diesel College, and graduated from there, and I actually had a pretty good job in the automotive industry. And the owner of our company decided he was going to take the company back to Florida and offered me to go with him. But of course, I've grown up here. I'm not going anywhere. So, but anyway, yeah. So I was talking to my dad, and at that point, I had Nicole, which is my wife now, and we had a brand new child, and I was like, I'm gonna have to scrape some money together and figure out how I'm gonna do this. And so my dad's like, look, it may not be what you always want to do, but you can make a living being an EMT. And he's like, if you're interested, I'll help get you through school. And so I was like, well, at this point, I don't have anything to lose. I don't have any jobs lined up, no big prospects. So found an accelerated program and did that during the summer, and boom, here we are.
And here we are.
Now it is your life and your career.
It is. It's wild.
When did you realize that it was going to stick?
Honestly, I can't tell you the time when I knew it was going to stick, but I can tell you when it piqued my interest. I actually, to back up a little bit, shortly before I went to EMT school, I joined the volunteer fire department here. Just kind of, I don't know if it's following my dad's footsteps or, whatever. It interested me at the time, and so I gave it a try and enjoyed that. But it was wild because as much as I enjoyed that, we started running first responder calls with the volunteer fire department. And the first night I ever rode, and Paula Todd, never forget.
Oh, yeah.
She was my EMS captain, Paula Todd. It was her and I on the truck, and I will never forget. We had like a massive stroke. We had a cardiac arrest, and then we had another one that was a shortness of breath, like legitimately,
like working. Yeah.
And those were the only 3 calls we had that entire night. But just watching, and obviously we were just EMRs, but
hey, those are heavy EMR calls. Like, y'all can do a lot on those.
For sure. But watching the medics come in and, like, do some cool stuff, and, like, it was just, as much as I enjoyed the fire department, that was, like, that opened my eyes. I was like, okay.
Yeah.
Okay. That whole EMT thing that my dad's been talking about, this is the direction we need to go.
Yeah, there might be something to it.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Listen, that Meador blood runs deep, because Grant was the same way. When he first started at the fire department, he was like, I'm just going to do fire.
Yeah.
And then he got his EMT, and he started part-time at our service, and he very quickly was like, oh, no, this is it.
Yeah.
Like, this is what I want to do.
I remember when he first was riding during clinicals, he was like, no, I'm just going to do the fire department.
Yeah, he always said that.
Whatever. And we're like, okay, Grant. And then he came back, and he had like this little sparkle in his eye. And we're like, oh, did it get you? And he was like, yeah, I love it.
Well, and I think even when I went through EMR, and learned some of the medical stuff and stuff like that, it was like, okay, cool. But then when you see it, and you see these things work, you see treatments work, and you see, methodologies for different things, and it's addictive.
It is.
It really is. I still, to this day, almost 15 years in, still.
It's fun.
Yeah, we get a good call, and I'm just like, I'm there. I love it.
Oh, absolutely. Austin, I don't know if you guys don't know this about him. These ladies do. But he has like the most aggressive juju vibes that you will ever.
Oh, yeah.
He will just show up on a scene that is dispatched as like such a benign thing. It'll be like tummy pain times 7 days. And Austin will show up, and I'll be like, oh, do you know something I don't know? And he's like, no, I'm just getting weird vibes.
Spidey senses.
He'll just be like, I'm just here to hang out. He never tells you. He's just like, oh, I'm just here to hang out. I was bored. And then he sees him, and he's like, AAA. And then he's right. And you're like, oh, my God. But it is. We've had a couple of wild calls that Austin was there because he had spidey senses.
Yeah.
And it turned out that, like, if we wouldn't have had a second unit there, it would have been a disaster.
Is there anything that you don't like about that you're like, this is the one thing that if I could change it, I would?
Well, I don't know that I would change it, because you guys know me. I'm very much a no regrets kind of person. But one thing that does sting as far as like living where you work and where you grown up is, not to throw him under the bus, but now that my dad's getting older and things like that, because of the life he's lived here, he does know a lot of people, and so it does suck. Remembering these people growing up and those kind of things, and they're getting older, and some of them are passing away, and some of them's kids getting in a traumatic accident or something like that, and so it's like you have to abide by HIPAA, but yet you want to console the family,
Yeah.
but yet, I mean, it's a really fine line to walk, and sometimes you just have to shut up and, eat that one. And when I say eat that one, just internalize it, process it.
Wait for them to find out naturally.
Right,
Yeah.
process it, and then, move on. Or in my case, I'm fortunate enough to have you guys, so,
And that's
talking to
such
you
like
guys, but-
the town that the county and city that we live in, it is like a bigger city with like little town
Yeah.
vibes.
Yeah, for sure.
And I feel like that's tough too.
Yeah.
Because that, like, hey, do you know, were you on this call? I know that person's my uncle. Can you tell me what happened? Like, all of that happens so frequently.
Yeah.
And you have to really be like, hey, like, I'm not allowed to talk to you about any of this.
Right.
Like, I can neither confirm nor deny.
Right.
I can't imagine growing up here because it has even
Mhm.
happened to me.
Oh,
And
yeah.
I worked my roommates, the person he was seeing,
I remember that. Yeah.
like their death. I worked their
Yeah.
death, and I had to. I couldn't. Luckily, I was in medic school, so I was very busy, and I did not
Mhm.
see them very much. But I could not tell them,
Yeah.
and they were trying to get a hold of this person.
Yeah. And you're like, I can't
I
talk to
cannot say anything.
Yeah.
That's literally like what? Like I can't
Yeah.
imagine it being all the time.
Yeah, I'm fortunate enough that it hasn't happened a lot, and again, fortunate, knock on wood, that it hasn't happened to a lot of like really, really close people.
you. Yeah.
Yeah.
But again, with my dad being I call him a local celebrity.
He
with
is.
him being the
He
local
is, yeah.
celebrity, he is. Yeah, I mean, there's people that I remember growing up, and there's people that remember my name, and I remember their names, and so.
Oh, the amount of times that I have heard, I knew that boy needs a diaper.
Yep.
Yes.
Oh,
I
yeah.
How many people have said I've changed his diaper on my desk? I'm like,
Yeah.
oh my god.
Wendy Gale.
Yeah.
It's creepy
Mm-hmm.
if you don't know about it, but when you like when you hear it,
Yeah.
you're like, that's creepy. But then
Right.
when you know the context of it, it's
Yeah.
You're like, oh, all right, it's probably fine.
yeah.
Yeah.
So,
No, I'll never forget an overdose that you and I ran, and all I hear on scene was Austin,
yeah.
and I was like, oh my gosh. But that was the first time that I realized that so many people knew you,
Yeah.
because I'm
It's-
just like, oh,
It's everywhere.
yeah,
Yeah.
it is.
It's-
It is wild.
Well, even I don't know how this situation happened, but because Austin lives in his service area, especially now that the whole county is your service area since you're a supervisor, I don't know how you found, I don't know if you had your pager with you or what happened, but you were like one of the first people on scene.
Yeah, no, that was actually just so happened to be cleaning out my truck. Cleaning out my truck, and my radio was on.
Mm.
I don't know why I turned it on. Like there
He
was
got
no-
the spidey
I was
senses.
just fixing to say,
Yeah.
I don't know, whatever, and they were,
Yeah.
So
I just remember,
was
I
just
think
a happenstance.
I was you that day. I was
Yes.
23 that day,
Mhm.
and I got out there, and I was on my way out there because Wendy was out there already.
The
or
scene
headed
was
that
like
way.
walkable to Austin's house.
Wendy was headed that way. I was headed that way, and then because all our supervisors have their own radios issued, so A Meador pops up on the radio,
Yeah.
and Austin's talking, and I was like, "Am I
I
supposed
can't
to
remember.
be here?"
I might have been with you. I
Yeah.
was with
Yeah,
I
we
think
might have been.
Aubrey.
Probably if she was
I
out.
think Aubrey and I
Yeah.
were together because we were like, "What is going on?
What is
Yeah.
happening?
I
Why
just
are all of our
remember-
people in the same place?"
Yeah, I was like, "Are you what? How are you here? Do you know them?" And you're like, "No, I was just around."
The closest person.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, I mean, I probably more than I should. I avoid when I'm off duty, getting into
I think this was special circumstances.
right, and that's the thing is you guys know me well enough to know I don't ever want to interrupt or skew another paramedic's thinking. I want you guys to do what you're doing. I don't want to show up as a supervisor, especially people that don't know me, and think that it's gonna go my way. No, I'm just here to help.
for sure.
And so I try to avoid those kind of things at all costs. But when it's that close to your house and it sounds that critical,
Yeah.
it's
That was
Oh, yeah.
definitely a good call.
Because
yeah.
at the time we did not have a station right across the street from this scene,
Mm-mm.
but now we do.
No,
But
it was like a decently long response
Yeah.
time. You landed air.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, it was
It's a whole thing.
pretty nifty.
Do your neighbors ever ask you for medical advice?
Oh my goodness. Of course, and you guys I'm sure get this too, but yeah, the neighbors do. I'm fortunate enough in my neighborhood that actually my direct next door neighbor, to the left of me, is also a nurse. So her and I get to split the duties, which is nice. But yeah, so my other neighbor, her grandfather, was sent home on hospice, and so she always asked me a lot of questions and came over to like look at him and those kind of things, just because she didn't know what to expect and that kind of stuff. So there's stuff like that happens pretty frequently, but much like I know you guys probably get used to it. Somebody's always calling you, asking you a question.
Yeah, you get pretty used to it.
The moment someone finds out.
Our neighbors, Haley and I's most recent neighbors, he was just like the sweetest man, but he called us the ER people.
The ER people.
No, the emergency people.
The emergency people.
Honestly, that sounds kind of cool.
Yeah.
We are the emergency people.
Yeah.
Which really is a fair assessment because, Haley's former police.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
So
yeah, just the emergency people.
Right.
And he was used to Kelly being there with her patrol car.
There you go.
So he's just like, I don't know what this house is, but it constantly has a first responder living in it. So.
What is... Sorry, that was kind of loud. Excuse me. What is one of the biggest changes you've seen in the service since you started? I know we have had some massive changes, but what is like the one that has like made your affected your practice as a paramedic the most?
I don't know if this one particularly has affected my practice because a lot of it has happened since I became a captain. So
yeah, but you still got to do paramedicing.
Yeah, I do. But I think the biggest change to the service is a pretty easy answer for me, and it's just the culture.
Yeah.
When I started here, it was very militaristic, and I'm not saying that in a negative light. I'm saying that it was effective. We had, when I got hired, just for context, when I got hired, I was one of 47 applicants, and that was just for that particular time slot. And so I was 12 out of 47 that they hired.
The good old days.
Yeah.
Right.
And so my whole point in saying that is it was very militaristic, which for me was not a nurturing environment initially, but it did work. It was very effective. We ran a good service. Service was well respected, well liked. I have always fallen on, I've been fortunate enough to always fall on I get to see the best of both worlds, the old school medic people and the new school coming up.
Yeah.
And I feel very fortunate for that. But I don't know that, when it comes to doing all these things that necessarily one way is right or wrong. But with that being said, the biggest thing is the culture here. And I'm going to shameless plug here. You girls and the people that you have talked to and the groups that y'all have come up together and those kind of things have changed the culture here so much for the better. We still run a good service. We're effective. Protocols are being worked on and becoming more advanced and those kind of things. And that's because of you and the like-minded people like you guys. And so for me, that kind of culture shift is really the biggest thing that I've seen that, impresses me and that I really want to be a part of,
Yeah. I think we're really lucky to work with a lot of hot shots. I think that's kind of like our service. We are like the wildland firefighters of EMS at our service.
Yeah.
Ooh, I like that. Yeah.
I think it's perfect because we're not so driven by other healthcare entities, but yet we do a lot of common sense, down and dirty medicine, which is effective. And like I said, with the culture change, it's been amazing for me. I can't imagine for people coming in, and again going back to the militaristic thing, that may work for some people.
It sure doesn't work for me.
It doesn't for me either, and
Right.
There was something to it because, like I said, it was one of the most well-respected services around for a really long time. But
I think it still is.
And I think generally, generation-wise, everyone responds to authority differently.
Correct.
And I think that the militaristic rule made more sense because those generations responded to authority that way.
For sure.
Like the big stick situation was
That's just how it was.
That's how it was.
Yeah.
And then as we've gotten honestly more access, I think, to like education and different ways of leadership and like social media and all of these things, I think the militaristic leadership has worked less and less and less. And you see leaders failing because they're still trying to do that. They're still trying to do like, listen to me because I said so.
Right.
Yeah.
And now people are like, oh, no, thank you.
Yeah.
I don't want to do that. And I've for 10 years seen that shift in our service, and that's been the coolest. The coolest thing to be able to go from what it was, where it was like, if you get called in the office, like, you're getting your ass chewed.
Right.
You avoid anyone in charge because they're just going to yell at you.
Yeah. Well, and for me, and this is just outside looking in, it seems that the culture shift that is still happening, but the big parts that really have happened already seem to work pretty well for everybody. You know, so we still have some of those old school people, but they still seem to respond to this new. And don't get me wrong, there's always pushback, but they still respond to the new, hey, are you okay? This isn't, you know, military, go do what I said. It's more of like, if you don't mind, would you please do this for me?
Yes.
You know, that kind of thing.
Like, they may have, I think the biggest difference for me is that people may have survived that kind of leadership, but they did not thrive in it.
Yeah.
And they know that.
Absolutely. And so even like old school providers that were fine with someone being like a militaristic leader or being like, this is what we're doing because I said so, I think that they're arguably happier now.
Oh, for sure.
Because now if they have an opinion or something that they do, they can explain.
Yeah.
You know, and be heard. And think that especially the kind of brains that find themselves in EMS, that is such a good thing for us to be like, I need to explain to you what my thought process is. And you mentioned that we're like the wildland firefighters of EMS, which I think is really fun because I think that they seem cool.
They are cool.
But I like that our service is not, you mentioned that like we're not so like other medical entity driven.
Correct.
And I like that a lot because it is not, and I don't say this in a negative or in a reckless way, but we are so much less like what's the protocol and so much more what does this patient need.
What's the right thing to do?
Yes. Absolutely.
And I think that patient care forward focus and like patient centered mindset is what EMS needs, because you can't cover every single thing in a protocol.
Absolutely not.
You need your providers to be able to like use their brain.
Yeah.
And I love that our service supports, hey, use your brain. Obviously don't operate outside of your protocol and like be a reckless little ding dong over there. But use your brain, think critically, do what patients need, talk to medical control if necessary. Like if you need to deviate, call and deviate. And I like that so much because it is better for humans.
Yeah.
Yeah,
and,
I think we're really lucky.
I think that has been another portion of the culture shift too, is now people aren't near as afraid to do what the patient needs, you know, because let the protocol, instead of the protocol guiding you on what the patient needs, let the patient dictate what the patient needs and use the protocol to the best of your ability within, you know, reason. And then, like you said, if you have to deviate from that, let's call a doc. Let's ask another opinion.
You can't write a protocol for everything.
Right.
I, for the life of me, cannot remember who this person was, but I was having a conversation with somebody, and they were asking, like, where I work, you know, whatever. I told them I work here, and they were like, oh, where do you live? And I said, oh, I work in the same place I live in the same place that I work. And they were like, that is such a sacrifice. And at first I thought, I was like, ugh, yeah, like, serve the community that you live in, like, all of those things that we hear pretty typically. And it took me about like 5 more minutes into that conversation to realize that that's not what he meant at all. He meant like it's a sacrifice to work where you live, not only because like you are serving your community and you're doing good in the place that you inhabit and all of those things, but also it's a sacrifice for yourself because, like we said at the beginning of this episode, you don't get to escape it, right? You're just, every call that you run, you're going to be reminded of it at least on a semi-regular basis. And there's just something to that.
Yeah, you sacrifice your peace.
Yeah, you sacrifice your peace doing that. And it's rewarding, but there's a loss that comes with that too, right? My question for you to kind of wrap this up is twofold. And I think we kind of already covered this first question, but do you wish, like if you could go back, do you wish that you didn't work in the place that you live?
No, absolutely not. It's never crossed my mind. Like you said, and that's very good to point out, I don't know that I've ever even thought about it on that level. It is a sacrifice, but let's be honest, we all sacrifice in this business, right?
Right.
And so I don't ever want to play the game of whose sacrifice is bigger or, you know, whatever, because everybody's different. But no, it's never crossed my mind of like, okay, this is not. Now, I am a firm believer, and you guys, we've talked about this. I am a firm believer that everybody is one call away from that like big decision, that big life-changing moment, right? So, you know, you wind up having to code your own grandmother, or you know, something like that.
Yeah.
That may be the thing that makes me go, okay, no, I wish this was different. But as of right now, I've been very fortunate. Like I said, I'm a very lucky man. So I have not had even an inkling of, you know, regret or you know, anything as far as working where I live, those kind of things. So.
My second question is, so you've got to witness your parents for like, what is it, 40 years now?
Mm-hmm.
Well, you're not even that old, so, but you, for your whole life, you've witnessed your parents do this job and live where they work and all those things. And then you yourself have been doing it for 15 years. What are some things that you have found to be like helpful coping mechanisms, or that you've witnessed from your parents?
I think the biggest thing for me is growing up. You guys know my dad, but for anyone who doesn't, my dad is a storyteller. I mean, the man takes a 5-minute story and makes it into a 30-minute book.
Oh, yeah,
every
he
time.
is a short story long.
Yes, and
Yep.
and I am also of that nature. I try to mitigate it a little more than he does. But
It's another meteorism.
it is a meteorism. Yeah, we tell long stories. So growing up, you know, I always heard his stories, and luckily for me, the majority of the stories that he told were always the funny, the odd, the, you know, whatever. And so I think that's the one thing that I learned from him, as far as like, you know, we drive past this, you know, intersection where there was a terrible wreck. The wreck that we were all on the way to my house, whatever it's been, a few weeks ago.
Oh, yeah.
That lady
It
was
is,
really
like-
critical, and the baby and all that thing.
Yeah,
you
it's
know,
like less than a half mile from
yeah,
your house.
I mean, it's right there by my house. I drove by it, and I actually struggled with that one a little bit.
Yeah.
Anyway, I try to make a point to remember the funny or the odd. You know, when I drive past, you know, these places or these locations and those kind of things, I try to remember more of the funny and try to let some of the more traumatic or ugly things go.
Yeah.
It's not always possible. Like I said, this most recent one was tough, but you know, if I can remember the funny and tell those stories and those kind of things, and again, fortunate that we kind of get to do that at the station. That really, I think, is probably something that I didn't realize I learned from my dad, but I think I did, because, man, you guys know David Meador. The
Like
stories.
he has to do that for as long as he's been
Yes.
in it, and he like
Yeah.
likes it still.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, he loves it.
And that is a really good way to cope, because you find yourself experiencing and being in the places and all the things, but a lot of the places that once you're here long enough that something really bad has happened, something really funny has probably also happened there.
Oh, for sure.
Oh, yeah.
Like the same intersection that I worked, like my first ever like fatality wreck. That was the same intersection that we had my first ever hypermetabolic behavioral emergency that I had to sedate with ketamine, and it was just like it went very, very well. Everyone was super great, but it was like the wildest call,
Yeah.
and I have fond memories of said call because it went so well. And it's interesting that those two things happen in the same place. They almost don't even seem like it.
Right.
But I remember the second call way more than I remember the first call.
Right, and that's,
Yeah.
I don't know if it's a coping mechanism that has happened within myself, but for some reason, again, very fortunate. It seems like those funny or those off-the-wall weird calls seems to stick in my memory a little bit better than the traumatic ones. Now, obviously, at first they don't, but, you know,
Yeah.
Over time.
time, yeah.
Mhm.
Time is definitely a fixer. So it is funny how those tend to be, man, some of the best calls I've ever run are hilarious, and it's usually
I can think of so many
Oh,
right now.
I know, that's
but they're
what-
so specific.
Usually,
Yeah.
just when I think of funny calls, I think of Sophie's face, and then James just grinning, just from one ear to the other, and so that's
Mostly like hiding behind the captain's chair so
Yes.
that nobody could see us.
I'll be
Yes.
making crazy faces. Yeah, I think that there has been a lot that's gone down. And one thing that I think about often is that, like, a lot of people on the air side of things, at least in our region, I don't know if this is a global thing, but we write down every single call. And I have every single call, every single flight I've ever taken. And a lot of people have this, like, diary of, like, thousands of calls that they run.
Dang.
But I could never, like, obviously we could never do that on this side of things because
Yeah.
we run so many calls at this service. But most of the calls that I, like, really vividly remember in my head are with the three of you guys.
Yeah.
They're the
Yeah.
easiest ones to remember.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, most of the time. I think I think I want to remember those calls so they stick a little. They're a little stickier than some other ones because whenever we're all on a call together, I feel like safe in it.
Yeah, and it's
Like,
like
I feel like my decision
dream
making.
team.
Yes, like my decision making is going to be solid. I have a backup if I need it. There's really like nothing that we can't do
the
all
flow is
together.
good.
And so yeah, I think that I want to remember those calls because I love them.
Man, we have been through it like you guys. I am so serious. You guys can't even imagine some of the things that we have been through together. We can't even say them for legal reasons.
If we could repeal HIPAA for a day,
For sure.
y'all would be in for it.
Well, I mean, just context on that. Soph and I's first call together as partners was a baby code.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
you know what I mean? Like,
Literally,
just,
I was like, "Is
Yeah.
this how it's gonna be?"
Yeah.
right?
And
And it
Austin was like,
was.
And that's how it was.
Yeah.
That's how it was.
It was nuts.
Yeah, it was. It was just wild after wild.
Mhm.
Never ever in my career will I ever say I've seen it all.
No.
Ever.
No. But if you want to get some good experience and see as much as you can, come here.
Right? Because this county, if you think that it can't happen, it will happen
It
here.
freaking will. We've had the amount of animals that have been involved in like patient injuries in this county.
Well, animals, and then, this is probably too soon. I don't want to talk it up, but like think about how often plane crashes happen.
I really thought he was going to
my
say
God,
something about
yeah,
the zebra.
No. I'm just saying, like, so we've got the
Think about how often
animal
zebras run.
encounters, but then now we've got plane crashes.
Plane
I feel like
crashes.
there's a plane crash every week now.
Right? Like, guys, we have a municipal airport, but I really didn't think that like municipal airports were that
Yeah.
like hot spots for plane crashes. But geez,
I mean, it's
This one is, I guess.
they sure are. And I guess it makes more sense than like
Small
a
planes,
commercial. Yeah. But man, people do just be crashing around here.
It is
Crazy.
wild.
one time Marshall and I got dispatched to a hot air balloon crash.
Yes.
And
I remember that.
I didn't know this, but that is a CAD option. Is hot air balloon.
Yeah.
Well, and what's
Right.
funny is, so y'all had that one. Zach Scalf had
Yeah.
the guy who held on to the side of the hot
Then
air
fell
balloon
off.
and wound
Yeah.
up falling like 20 feet.
Which
Yep.
was serious.
Yeah.
Yep.
It's crazy.
God.
Like,
Ours
who
was
would
fake.
ever thunk when you get into EMS, like,
Hot
oh,
air balloon.
traumatic call, hot air balloon. What?
Right? Like fall greater than 10 feet. Oh, he fell off a hot air balloon.
Right.
I'm
Yeah.
sorry, what?
Yeah. And it's, I mean, I feel like we can say that because it's happened like multiple times.
I
Like,
know.
it's not even identifying one person.
Yeah.
Which is the problem
Yeah,
here.
it's more frequent than you'd think.
It's kind of weird.
It is.
Oh my gosh.
Austin, thank
Yes.
you so much for being on the podcast today. This was so fun.
Absolutely.
It's
Listen,
not-
we can do this anytime.
We're
We'll
about
just-
to do it a
yeah.
few more
We're-
times.
We
Let's
need
do
to
it.
start bringing the mics to the station because
Yeah.
we act like this is so different. It is not. This is what we do.
I know, it's like
all day,
across
every
the
day.
street from the station. We could just.
Ding,
Literally
ding,
walk
ding,
over there. Yeah. Thank you so much for being on this episode. We'll definitely do it again sometime soon.
Well, thanks for having me. I really appreciate the opportunity. And
Oh,
boy, you guys just killed my nervousness. It was great.
good.
It was great.
Good. Because we're chaotic.
Yes.
With that being said, we'll see you guys next time, and make sure that you find an Austin Meador near you. Bye.
This has been Life in Sirens, produced by 3 nerds trying to bring you content that you might actually care about.